and wrote. It meant coming out as a poet.
Even the gay city of Amsterdam has its dark side lost to memory. The town square masks its past in a cloak of gentle merriment. But during the 1700s, it was a place of execution. In this period, many women reconstructed gender by cross-dressing, and if caught, the consequences for these passing women could be devastating. Here in the town hall, they crossed a miniature world on their way to public trials for their crimes of passion. Such an act was called peccatum mutum, the silent sin, the sin that cannot be named. The victims pondered their fate as they faced the magistrates seated in front of these female figures, symbolizing shame and suffering. The recommended penalty: strangulation, burning, or drowning. The more fortunate received commuted sentences of life imprisonment or banishment from the city. This is Maria van Antwerpen, a typical cross-dresser of the period. She is described as a practicing soldier, a tailor, a healer of skin diseases, and a pipe-smoking patriarch fond of fishing. She traveled the Dutch countryside courting available women, and at 29 years of age, married Johanna Kramer. It took her bride 3 years to discover Maria's true sex. She was tried and banished from the city in which they lived. Maria wrote in her autobiography, "It often made me wrathful that Mother Nature treated me with so little compassion, against my inclinations and the passions of my heart." There were many women like Maria, and hundreds of trials of passing women took place across Europe. In a world cognizant only of love between male and female, it is little wonder that some concluded, if I have feelings for women, then I must be a man.
I began to pass with the aid of hormones when I was about, I don't even remember, maybe I was 18, maybe I was 20. I'm not even sure, looking back, when it began. I felt like an endangered species on the street. I had no support. I had no job. And suddenly, through passing, I was able to find a job. Nobody bothered me much on the street. Guys at work were nice. Some of the women flirted. It seemed like a tremendous relief. It was the first time in my life that I had enough relief from pressure as a butch to be able to look at the world and see things like class and race, to be able to see how society was structured outside of my own oppression. I no longer had to run with my hands over my head protecting myself through life without looking. And so I think it both enabled me to look at the world in a new way, but it also was a building oppression. It was one that built slowly and gradually. I began to understand that what I had to sacrifice was having given up my entire past to rewrite my own history, where I went to high school, who I was, how I looked at the world. Everything had to be rethought out in order to pass, because passing is invisibility.
The persecution of passing women in Europe forced many to seek out the safety of a new world. In the mid-1800s, a French immigrant cross-dresser, Jeannie Bonnet, sought refuge on California's Barbary Coast. She frequented the brothels as a customer, convincing many to leave the trade. She organized them in all-women's gangs, and they survived by petty stealing. She was often arrested by San Francisco police for wearing male attire. Her funeral was described in the press of 1876 as, quote, having been attended by many women of the wrong class, the tears washing little furrows through the paint on their cheeks. On one of Jeannie's visits to the brothels, she fell in love with a prostitute, Blanche Bunot. As she lay in Bunot's bed, an assassin's bullet was fired through the window. Bonnet was dead, murdered by her lover's jealous pimp.
There is a virtual